But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. We choose to go to the moon.
Hello. So today I will be doing our introduction. This is my first stab at it. And I'm going to be partially reading from a script, so bear with me. Welcome to the 46th episode of the World Blockchain Roundtable. And our hosts today are Greg, myself, I'm on the list, Dave from Den Social, Satoshi Shon, entrepreneur and everyone's friend, and Joe, architect and founder of Dragonchain. So last week, the layer ownership tokens, the layer ownership token distribution tally is each host got 111, and each topic contributor from last week got 55. Themes suggested by Sebadingus, you will receive 55 lot for that. And these ownership tokens as always, come with perpetual passive income, free edits, and governance votes. So, current events, onto that topic. And I think the most interesting one I'm going to prompt everybody with is what's happening on Twitter's board, man, and how does that impact crypto Twitter?
Hopefully it's good, right? Hopefully it's good. I mean,
yeah, I'm optimistic.
It's surprising.
I'm optimistic. Most I see it as the disruptive move, and most disruptive things I'm optimistic about.
Yep.
It was one question I had about it. I saw numerous of the breaking news reports were that it was 9.1 or whatever % passive shares, which I wonder, does that mean somehow non-voting share? I didn't know what that meant. So
I didn't see that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, non-voting shares would be like any kind of share that you would have, let's say you have to send some issue to the shareholders for validation or for ratification at the annual meeting. That would be like for the sale of the company, sale of the whole company, or like taking it private, or any kind of thing that basically their operating agreement requires them to take to a shareholder vote, or that the law requires them to take to a shareholder vote. Those people don't vote. So non-voting shares are actually pretty common for board members in big companies. Because they're the ones typically passing those issues to the shareholders. So having them vote on it anyway would be a situation where they might even have to recuse.
Okay.
And so he has the power. I mean, any corporate board has one power, right? Who can pop quiz? Who wants to answer this one? What is the one power that a corporate board truly has? No, they can fire the CEO. Basically.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
I
what
think issue
job,
stock
right?
too, right? Or I mean, there's.
I mean, there's soft power there. Like you can advise on issues, but ultimately the power that they have over the company has to do with their ability to take the top executive officer out of the job and replace him with somebody who will play along. So
play along.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how many people are on the board at Twitter, but he's the biggest shareholder now. He replaced Morgan Stanley, like not the guy, the mega bank, as their number one shareholder. And now he's in the room every time the board has to talk to the CEO. So it's to me a dynamic shift that especially given his frankness and likelihood to expose any bullshit.
I was thinking that myself, that having the loose cannon in the room is going to hopefully
well, I would even say less loose cannon, more hopefully honorable person because I don't think they've had much honor in that board for a while. Not knowing who's on the board, of course. I just by judging the way that their companies run.
Actually, I'm not sure who's on it. Totally.
Right. And by the way, did you see before it was announced that he made the this acquisition that Jack had that tweet, might have been the day before or 2 days before, saying, talking about how the internet used to be email, Usenet, and the web, which was very decentralized, and that he acknowledged that he was part of the mistake or problem that is become more centralized. Yeah. And I wonder if that was after a quick discussion with Musk before all of that happened. It had to have been,
Well, I mean, that is, I think he's expressing late the spirit of the movement that he is trying to build a product in. So I take it with a grain of salt, because as much as I actually believe that is probably true, I don't think that he wanted to build anything other than something that would be the free speech wing of the free speech party. I thought that was genuine. He fucked it up, and he fucked it up in a way that Web3 should really perk up and pay attention to, all of us, right? Because he didn't pay attention to the details that ended up making it so he was beholden to people who would dislike and undermine those beliefs. They should never have been able to get power.
Yeah. Well, this is a question for Sean. Do you think? What do you think? Who owns Jack? Same thing with Zuckerberg. Same thing with Spez. In my opinion, judging upon all their actions, they all are owned. Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about that, because all of his, the bulk of his income there in the beginning, and still is government subsidies. So, there's all the questions. Is it a show? Is it for real? And then Anonymous did that big piece about him, that he's basically, kind of an ass. That anything that he's doing for good is just kind of a byproduct, because he's just feeding his ego. His family was like hardcore apartheid, South African emerald mine. They own like a bunch of emerald mines. So
that was actually, his dad owned a failed one at some point.
Well,
it's not. That was just like that's.
So I used to love Elon Musk.
It's like Snowden is an unlimited limited hangout or something.
I kind of
level of nonsense.
I backed off of my hero worship a little bit, but I have hope. Like you said, it's like the one that I'm not very hopeful in when it comes to a lot of stuff. I'm just kind of like a realist. You look at history.
I feel
this happens. This is the next step. This is the next step. It's happened time and time again. We're in history right now. We're at this step. The next step is going to be just bloody and horrible.
Yeah.
But then we have, I always say we have cryptocurrency. It's the only difference. It's a huge difference. It's one of the big pillars of evil is the money, and we have the ability to take that pillar away. So
let's say the evil is in the manipulation of the money. The money itself should be a force for good, and it can't be.
It's
right. There's an old quote that I like that is essentially, if you believe money is the root of all evil, or if someone believes money is the root of all evil, that person got their funds evilly. But if somebody respects where you got your money or respects money, then they got it from a legitimate source.
GP12 says Elon wants to live in a Star Trek / Asimov world. Those are different worlds, man. If you know sci-fi,
those are quite different.
Star Trek would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd be down with that. I started getting into Star Trek finally, like 3 years ago for the first time, and I gotta say, it's pretty cool. Good stuff.
I would say about Musk. You never know. You never know about some of the people. There's so much controlled opposition that the puppeteers handle. You never know, but I'd have to say, if there wasn't some amount of what do I even want to say? I don't even want to say like good versus evil, but more the fact that he's doing stuff. I mean, if you've ever driven a Tesla, those are, the technology is amazing. I don't care about the greenhouse side of the whole thing. The technology is absurdly amazing. It uses Linux. It's just the whole thing just makes sense to someone who's an engineer. And then you look at SpaceX and you're like, okay, they're doing things that no government has been able to do for decades.
And they're doing it with old school, iterate as fast as possible techniques, right? The basic concepts of good engineering, he just does. And it looks like magic when he does it because he doesn't compromise on it.
Yes.
But, well, I mean, and he sees things and looks at them pretty objectively. But
that's a sight to behold. That is equivalent if we lived in the in wartime era of watching Hughes build what he built, which a lot of people hated him. A lot of it, in the end, I think that Howard Hughes was a force for change and good in the world, but it wasn't that wasn't the reason he was doing it, right? So it's just because that's what he was interested in. So
I've seen some really weird little pieces of evidence that a lot of people might not know about Elon Musk's character that make me buy into a little bit more probably than most people would. Some of the hype about the guy, and that comes from I don't know if you guys are familiar at all with the account of John Kreider, who is now a reporter at Clean Technica who covers electric vehicles and largely Tesla. And she also runs a show called Getting Stoned, but it's about geology.
That's pretty good.
She's from Louisiana. She's like the nicest person I have ever met. I had a chance to talk to her like a couple times on stream, and she had a dark time that she went through, and was really thinking about ending her own life. And Elon Musk pulled her through it by reaching out to her and saying it was going to be okay and saying hang on. And his direct involvement with that. He helped her get the job at Clean Technica as well. And she was before not doing journalism. This was something she got into because she wanted to. Today, this person is a force for making the world better because she's super positive, right? I really do think that little things like that, plus the big things, point to a guy who's out to just try to help humanity be a little bit brighter.
Yeah. So, and I will say anyone that the media is generally embarking against is there's always this tinge of it's like they probably are all right in some way at least, because if the media hates them, then there has to be something good there, and that's
right.
And by the way, I grew up thinking, Bill Gates, amazing stuff. I know now some of the BS that initiated that, and I think that entire world is fake now.
Right, he wasn't self-made.
Yeah,
they tried to sell him that way, but he wasn't.
It's all BS. It's crazy.
Anyway. The other thing that I would like to add about this one topic is, as a person who grew up in the late '90s and saw the reversal of the Apple almost crash, that was the thing that inspired me to move into tech ultimately, rather than just leave behind a law job and come into this. When Steve Jobs died, I thought that spirit was gone. I think that moves presumptively to Elon Musk, like that spirit of you can't stop the crazy ones. The question is who's going to stop them, and nobody can.
Yep.
So if you're going to go back to that original spirit, that sort of whole Earth catalog idealism, if there's one person carrying it, still it's that dude. So
good stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, so other current events that matter. There probably are at least one or two that we want to sideways mention. Anybody think of anything that I'm missing?
Miami, all the crypto events.
Oh yeah, Miami. How's Miami?
The crypto bowl. I have a question for Dave while he's there.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if the muggers in Miami have had to switch to asking for keys, or if they just says like we can't really rob anybody because they're not going to be holding anything or anything else like that.
That's interesting. So somebody tried to break into my room last night. I have I got an Airbnb. It's on a ground floor. Looks like an old motel that's been renovated. Anyway, like middle of the freaking night, somebody's banging on the door trying to get in, thinking it's theirs or something. It's wild here, man. It's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just from a small town, but people don't give a fuck. It's weird.
That's cool.
But yeah, I thought it's interesting because we're doing today's topic is privacy coins and CBDC. I'm at Monerotopia right now. But yeah, I thought it's interesting because we're doing. Oh, am I
Repeats.
repeating?
It's all good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. I keep running in. It's this whole week. I doubt Miami's like this all the time, but this whole week, everywhere I go, I run into like someone who's doing a Web3 thing, or there's a conference for crypto people. Like this morning, I went to breakfast, but I couldn't because the whole place was having a meeting for crypto. I walked in, I was like, oh, there's people here. It's crowded. And they were like, you're here for the crypto thing? And I'm like, no, I'm here for breakfast.
Pancakes.
They were like, yeah, it's a crypto breakfast meetup. And I was like, oh, I guess so. So like, I don't know. It's exciting to see so many people. I've met people from like East Africa, Japan this morning. I was showing somebody the layer, Japan layer. He thought that was pretty cool. Sorry, the airplane going overhead. It says start a DAO. Says start a DAO, save the world, earthfund.io. It's an airplane with one of those
sign.
Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah,
Dude,
I think I'm gonna
awesome.
probably come here every April. I came down last year for Bitcoin, and I went to that one only. This year I'm skipping Bitcoin, but I went to shitcoin yesterday and the day before, and going to Monero today. So it's inspiring to see so many people. I mean, it's global.
Yeah.
And I was reading something, I think somebody on Den posted some numbers, some metrics that they had found, some research somewhere about first-time cryptocurrency owners. And like upwards of 50% of people reported that this was their first year getting into it.
Yeah.
So there is like, I mean, there's a lot of people have never heard of, for example, Dragonchain. They're brand new. They don't,
Yep.
they don't remember any of the prior stuff that we remember. So that's cool because there's, fresh impressions, there's new ideas, there's, people that are arguing against it with points I haven't really had to argue with before. So that's cool. It's mental gymnastics a little bit.
That's awesome, man. Seen any celebrities yet?
I saw a guy stand up and start talking to the crowd and say, for those of you who don't know me, I'm so-and-so. I don't know. I don't watch a lot of YouTube. So I guess
I do that all the time, just because it's hilarious. Like if somebody calls or they're like, and here it's like Sean Henderson. Yes, the Sean Henderson. I just didn't say, and they automatic every time, dude. They're like, oh, okay.
I saw who have I seen?
Because like they feel like they should know. You know what I mean? Like, yes, the Sean Henderson. Yeah.
yes, it's
so
the
weird.
one. That's me. I met Ben, Bitcoin Ben, I think is his name.
Yeah.
I met, he's got great teeth now. So congrats on that. He got a whole new grill. Looks amazing.
I don't know who this is.
Bitcoin Ben, yeah, he's a fun guy, dude.
For sure.
Wait, he's a mushroom?
Crypto was there.
Sorry.
Fun, that's good.
Some Wax people. The shitcoin conference was full of like Wax is doing cool stuff now, which personally I'm not personally a fan of Wax, but what I saw yesterday or whenever it was the day before, actually starting to do some cool stuff. This is where I think all the new people, without preconceptions like I have, like I dealt with Wax in the past and decided it wasn't for me. Now they've done a lot of stuff since then. Apparently, I haven't kept up with them.
I think they're great for newbies. I think they're great for adoption. You know what I mean?
Well, there's this guy.
Compare them to ETH. Don't jump on me, Greg. When it comes to like NFTs, creation, owning, all that kind of stuff, they've simplified it and cheapified it so much.
Yes.
Where it's it's so much better.
There's a really neat like a newbie friendly mint your own NFT interface with a built-in marketplace. I think the guy said it was called Nifty Blocks. And he demoed it and I was like, oh dude, like anybody I know can do this right now. It has no barrier of entry.
That's why the tribalism is not good, because if they're solving problems that actually get people in, that's the goal. And and people will migrate to which network they think is most fitting for whatever they're doing, and that should be a choice. And I don't know.
But-
I mean, I keep thinking, by the way, speaking of that and speaking that 50% number, every time I see some of this stuff, I think of Sean, and I'm thinking, you know what? I mean, this very much feels like so I worked in a record store out of school, and in Lawrence, Kansas, no less. And so
It was like the best job in Lawrence, Kansas.
Yes. Yeah. And it was like, you met everybody in town, everything else. It was notable to me when what I would consider, the non-nerds, the normies were using the internet. It was like this, it's like, wait a minute. It's like, what, and it wasn't like, oh, that's horrible. These people are involved. It was like, it was obvious that there was a change, because it wasn't all that, what are you talking about? Why would I do that? It was, oh, I did this, and like, you, right? It was just crazy. And it feels very much like that all of a sudden, and when you get it in normal conversation, where it's not just a financial on CNBC, and it's not just, it's a normal company saying we're doing X, that's when stuff starts to change. And especially when people are just buying NFTs. And that's why, like, yeah, Sean, you've mentioned so many times that the NFTs are what's bringing in the normies.
Well, also just that's the bringing the interest. Like my cousin came to me and she was like, NFTs, what's up with NFTs? What's an NFT? So I, talked to her about it, and then she goes on OpenSea, and how do I make an NFT? And then it's like, oh, it's a little complicated, but it's, so expensive. Like I wanted to do a test to see if, because Litecoin Lisa gave me some money, and because I was whitelisted to get these NFTs, and she wanted some and I wanted some. So, but she said, can you send that to a trust wallet? Because I don't have a MetaMask. So I was like, well, let me just send you a different NFT just to see. So I went to buy an NFT that was like 80 cents. And then it would have been like $72 to buy it, just in gas. And then to send them, when I actually did send them to her, it was like $150 just to send the NFTs, to transfer ownership. So that's not really usable to somebody who wants to just try it out. So, my cousin was like, and then I told her about Wax, and her exact words were, oh, I can do this. And then she knew she made NFTs. She started getting, just interested in it, which when I found Wax, I bought like 100 NFTs. It's like, no lie. Because they have
some on there. Yeah.
They're a lot like to me, they're a lot like Dragonchain. They're focused on like real world stuff. They're focused on business. Yeah. And there was it was Star Trek was on there. William Shatner, he did like a special release on Wax. So I was just buying NFTs, not thinking they're worth anything. Iron Maiden, I bought a buttload of those. Hot Wheels, just stuff I thought was cool. And, before I knew it, I had like hundreds of NFTs.
Yeah.
Wax wallet.
They just sort of build up.
Yeah. And then the value, I was like, oh man, this one Iron Maiden pack that I bought is worth like, $200 now. And I bought it for like, $8 or $18. So that wasn't the number go up. That's not what I started doing. It was just like, oh, this is cool. Oh, that's cool. Oh, I like this, Street Fighter. They had Street Fighter.
I bought a bunch of, I spent some Dash on a bunch of booster packs for, I think it was called, I don't know if it was called Steam Monsters or, anyway, it's a card game. I forget what it's called now. But yeah, I've got a bunch of stuff for the same reason. You know what I keep getting reminded of for some reason is you're talking about, the difficulty with Litecoin Lisa, who I should be meeting up with later here as well. So that'll be cool. And I keep getting reminded of like MySpace, because you remember when So with MySpace, if you remember, it was really popular to go and get templates to make your page look all fancy, right?
Yeah.
And these templates were just somebody's HTML template. You copy and paste it. And people would always go in there and hack it up a little bit to make
Right.
it, you take out the attribution and make it look like they did it. And it's like, it's kind of similar to where you see all of these like iterative art projects with NFTs. They go grab a smart contract and they, oh, okay, let me copy this smart. I don't know how to write one, but I can copy one, and then I can go and maybe change some things.
Right.
Well,
There's so much latent creativity in that, like that we can't really do because of IP.
And then I was also this week thinking about with Den and MySpace. MySpace early on was kind of a go-to spot for bands to host their music and get their communities together and have sort of a spot.
That was one of the last things that had relevance in.
Yeah. And so with Den, we're doing, this year we're pushing with like this turnkey DAO offering that we have. And so, the analogy there I see is like, okay, well, this could be a go-to place for DAOs to, to have a spot, to have like the band page on MySpace, because it was really easy at the time. It was really useful. I don't know. It's just kind of cool to see things not repeat, but rhyme, I guess.
Yeah.
A little, all this new stuff is kind of doing that.
And another interesting point probably worth making, that's a good segue into the topic, is with Den, you don't have to have crypto to start using it. If you want to go play with anything with ETH, or like basically any other DeFi project or any DeFi projects or DAOs or whatever else, you have to have a little bit of ETH to pay gas, right? Like all that stuff has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, and I am seeing actually some places like Den, when you sign up, you get that first little bit of points to get you going. I'm seeing some things like I want to say might even be Flux or something. I remember 2 or 3 wallets with different blockchains that I've downloaded this year have, upon creating a wallet, you get a faucet drop into your wallet. That way you don't have to like figure out how to buy Ether to pay gas to buy your NFT before you even go in to try to do that.
Well, you've got a really great anon idea, by the way, as just like a pure identity that you could put up, but only say what you want to say if nobody can trace you back to you. Man, Den is the place to start it, because you only have to go get that first bit of gas from your first bit of gas from a local ETH drop. Like go meet someone and pay cash for it. And everything else, if your content's amazing, you can make enough to enter DeFi without having to use a centralized provider.
Right. I still consider
Lisa, try if you run into Miss Teen Crypto, tell her I said hi, but try to talk her into coming on the show. I've tried to. I think she's intimidated by you guys for sure.
I saw her yesterday, but I didn't meet up with her or anything.
She's a sweet
I think she had the closing talk yesterday at the conference.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'll hit her up.
Yeah,
Cool.
I mean,
absolutely.
anybody you guys can get on would be great. So
yeah, no, I mean, anybody who.
Oh, you know what? Speaking of, I did meet up with Lisa, the Litecoin Lisa, previously, and it looks like she might want to come on for that. We have a topic coming up on what is it? We hit on it last time we were talking about. Was it tribalism? Do we have a tribalism?
We do have tribalism
episode. Cool. Yeah, I think that she might come on.
Did she tell you about the Bitcoin?
Yeah, we talked about that.
It's horrific, isn't it? It's horrific.
Right, and that's when I said, we got an episode on tribalism coming up.
What was that? Tell us what the.
She got asked. Her, Clint Westwood, and a couple other people were going to this. It's a meetup, and they asked for her. She was going to speak, and the people that were running the event put just something out on Twitter, and she was like, "Yeah, great," and these other speakers started trashing her, like, "Oh, you piece of shit," and then threatening her with like violence and like death.
Yes. One dude was talking about how he was going to drive like out of state, drive into town to use her as target practice and literally murder her.
Yeah, and these were people just because her name was Litecoin Lisa, and then
wow.
But one of them made a post that was the contradiction was so ridiculous. It's like, hey, if I put a gun to your head, are you going to stand up for your coin, or are you going to die for it?
What?
But no, you won't, because you should. And then he's like, I would, because I believe in freedom and choice. Not like you. I was like, do you understand what you've just written? It's like,
Yeah, your free activities over here is infringing upon my right to be a maximalist.
yeah,
It's like.
But then she went to the people that were having the event, and she was like, hey, this is a little bit wrong, pretty bad. And they're like, yeah, it's pretty crazy, man. And then she waited like a day or two, and they didn't say anything or do anything. So then she said, hey, I don't want to go to a meetup with people that threaten to kill me. Why aren't you doing anything? And they're like, oh, you were so nice yesterday or the day before. She's like, yeah, because I'm polite and I thought you were going to fix this, but you haven't done anything for 2 days. I don't want to walk in to this show with people that threaten me and like my family. So then like the guy apologized, but it was insane. And then the people that were like, yeah, man, fuck those guys. Yeah, like cool killer. I mean, it was just nuts. The infighting, which if I was a bankster, I would just be, sitting back, smoking my big cigar and laughing with my, top hat on, like they all do.
Yeah, let them all tear each other apart.
Yeah, monocle, exactly.
Right.
Let the competition.
The floating hat too, maybe.
Thanks for the free parking, guys. Yeah, no, I think it's critical, and it's just one of the many facets I think that privacy actually plays into, sort of the whole picture of, the freedom of expression that is underlying this movement. Like ultimately, when you think about it, if you wanted to reduce all of the crypto and Web3 and everything movement down to one concept, it's we want our free expression back.
Yeah.
So with that, let's jump into some questions, shall we?
Yes.
Awesome.
Right on.
All right. So, and there's some really good ones out there this week. So we've got Dragonchain Holder. Do you think the United States is justified in their efforts to suppress privacy coins? Is there a happy medium to regulators, or should they just have to accept people can and will use privacy coins?
No, there's no justification whatsoever. Period.
Right.
That's it. There doesn't need to be a talk. I mean, and Greg, I think were you on Crypto Rewind when we talked about the non CBDC digital currency with the Treasury, which
right.
I think is I feel hopeful about that. And I said this a few weeks ago that I think over this next weeks and months we're going to see these really well defined lines in the sand, and people are going to have to now come out on one side or the other. They're going to have to come out on the side of freedom, privacy, and liberty, or they're going to have to come out on the side of legacy, control, and big
right.
bang. And we've been seeing that. We've been seeing what government officials, we'll call them, which side certain ones are on. And I think that the ones that are talking about this this digital dollar, the main thing that they keep saying is it has to be digital cash. It has to be privacy. But then people are like, well, if you lose your phone, you lose your money. And they're like, yeah, you lose your wallet, you lose your money.
Right. There are ways around. There are ways around that though.
Way.
Like,
yeah.
If you go on GitHub and look at key split, just look up key split. You will see a solution that does not involve destroying privacy to allow one to recover their coins.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say destroying privacy, I think we should start with a definition of privacy, right? Like, what do you guys think of when you think privacy? Like, what is it to you, and what do you think it is, objectively as a thing?
The truth, I think it has developed into something that it's more complex than it probably needs to be. That if you consider, let's say in the Middle Ages, when I went to buy eggs at the market, I would either bring a medium of exchange like gold or silver coins. Yes, they were minted by the government, but guess what? They were just gold or silver.
Mhm.
And that they might have a denomination, and one way or another, they were tradable, and there was no way for the government to trace that. In fact, if you look back at what the publicans did in the Roman Empire, that they would have to go door to door to collect taxes, and they would have to make judgment calls, and it was probably pretty brutal because I think they would have clubs and there would be violence involved. But so it's, taxation is evil, taxation is theft, all the rest of it I still do believe, but at least they didn't have the ability to say, hey, this person is paying for that other senator's campaign, therefore I'm going to go and do something against them, which they could do now, right? If somebody has enough power, they could find out where you are spending your money. In fact, it's registered. They could look up. In fact, some idiot on Twitter can look up if you've contributed to Trump. Is that legit? It's like, no, it's really kind of shitty for a free country. But
I mean, the thing that sucks about all of this, right? Like, I did a talk on privacy at Private this last year. Private, I guess is how they would pronounce it. It's spelled like a portmanteau of the number 8 and the word priv. But the thing that I got into when I started researching it is, like, people think of privacy and they still conflate it with secrecy, right? They conflate it with this idea that privacy equals keeping things hidden from everyone.
Yeah.
That is not what privacy is, right?
Yeah.
Privacy is the right to selectively expose information to people that you want to. It is the right to choose what information you share about yourself with the world.
You made it sound very dirty.
Right. That is actually, when you think about it, the power that our government has over us already. They can tell us what they want, and they can not tell us what they want. That is the world over, right? Some of them feel more than others, but they get to decide. Why should we not have a balanced right going the other direction? In what world does that not lead to at least a moral hazard for dominance?
I like that definition of privacy. The ability to selectively,
expose.
Expose.
Yep. Wish I came up with it. It's actually Eric Hughes from the Cypherpunk Manifesto, which we can link in the show notes. But when I found that, I was like,
that's by the way is part of the reason the architecture for Dragonchain is the way it is. That for a business, the same thing, or for a person, the fact that you should be able to selectively expose information, but offer, leverage blockchain. In fact, leverage Bitcoin and Ethereum and other networks for contemporaneous proof that this thing that I'm exposing to you actually happened at that point in time, and this is really what it was, that I'm not changing info or anything else. And it's all possible and it's all doable.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I think with the pandemic, it really it kind of held a mirror up to this issue when it comes to privacy. Like, I remember when the questions first started, before it was a thing, I did it. If anyone would ask me any question about private health stuff, in a public setting, I would, go for the jugular. If we went to a restaurant, they're like, have you been vaccinated? I'm like, well, do you have herpes? And anything they would throw at me, I would throw it back at them. And they're like, why are you asking me that? I'm like, it's the same thing, man. You're asking me my personal medical information, and you're a busboy, dude. There's no reason for this.
Right.
Medical professionals get sued for doing what you're doing.
Right.
And you think it's okay. It's
Dude, exactly. I mean, the vaccine mandates were literally being imposed upon people through their employers, and employers were responding to the need to know if somebody was vaccinated by asking for an absolute whole release of the entire medical records of their employees as a requirement to continue being employed.
I would tell you, we have You'll have at one point the medical industry, the health industry telling you, your child is now of whatever age, and therefore you cannot, without their permission, ask me this. Yet HIPAA means nothing when I go into a fucking restaurant. It's insane.
It blows the mind. And the other thing to remember here too is this: when we started as a country, we didn't have any of these digital technologies, and the only reason that you can be invaded by anybody is because of a contrivance of constitutional interpretation that the court created, specifically thinking that they were going to protect privacy with this, that it was objectively, did this person reasonably expect privacy in this thing they were doing? And they're like, yeah, okay, reasonable expectation of privacy. That's the new standard. And what ended up happening is when they wanted to put in place the Bank Secrecy Act, it was challenged constitutionally at first on grounds that it overstepped the powers allocated, right? Like that it violated a whole bunch of fundamental principles, not even in the Bill of Rights. But that didn't succeed. They get this thing enacted, and all of a sudden, there's this weird double argument, right? You give your information voluntarily to the bank when you sign up for an account, and therefore you have no reasonable expectation of privacy in your banking information. Anything you give them, you've given to a third party. Oh, we've got the third party doctrine now. And the third party doctrine is used exactly to say that all these things, all these tools we used to keep in, locked boxes in the back of our houses in colonial times when they wrote the Constitution of the United States, what they meant by that was all this stuff that you use your phone for is sacrosanct and should not be subject to invasion by an arbitrary government official without a good reason. And that's where the government has no right, in my opinion,
but now it's being
to
flipped
come in
and
and
saying,
take it because the third party doctrine is a poor justification for subverting the intent of the founders' doctrine.
Well, and the fact that the Fourth Amendment is effectively gone, and that it's in fact its dissolution was automated, right? That it wasn't even just, the cops need to know something, so we're going to violate the Fourth Amendment in this one case. No, we're going to put in an API and plug it in so that any of these organizations can do it. And I do think that whole argument about with privacy that was pushed very early on, which was, hey, I'm not doing anything that I care, if the government sees, I'm not doing anything illegal, I'm not doing anything wrong, so sure, I don't care. To make it feel like the people who are advocating for privacy are doing something wrong. That's the secrecy argument, right? And I think that was put that on purpose. And the reasoning is that the Ron Paul-esque side argument that the definition of the 1984 style totalitarianism necessitates the government to collect all information and simultaneously to enact as many laws as possible, so that effectively everyone in your country has and or is continuously doing something illegal that they might not even know is illegal, so that when it matters, they can reach out and grab you. And that's the whole point of all of these things that they want to trace. They are not looking, and proof in pudding, they're not looking for the terrorists, or else they would have known who the fuck those guys were in Boston when that happened. Mm-hmm. And you can see, this is Boston. This is like, say, the birthplace, the Bethlehem of freedom in this country. And people in Boston have such changed mechanics mentally now that they invited the cops in. I was like, sure, search my basement for these guys. And the cops had to literally come out and say, do you know these people? I was like, wait a minute, you've been following every goddamn one of us. Shouldn't you fucking know who those people are? It's crazy.
You talk about the proof in the pudding. That is one of the biggest arguments. All of these things that have happened since that date, it's like 99% of all of the actions taken have been against U.S. citizens, not terrorists.
Right. creepiest
hasn't
part
been
about
for
all of it.
what it was sold as.
Yeah.
But it's from, it's the government, so of course it's sold as something completely different.
The creepiest part about all of it, and the shittiest part about all of it, is that, and this is something people don't really know because they don't talk. It's really boring to talk about court precedents, right? You don't see entire news shows dedicated to it. You should, because that's where the Constitution gets defined. Like if somebody wants to say, what does it mean when you say free speech? You can't point to the Constitution and say that. You have to look at the case records and see what they decided it means. Because really, it's always been 9 appointed people that decide what our Constitution says, and they follow a rule that says we're going to kind of go by what we said last time, no matter what it is, unless we have a really good reason to deviate. So,
I have a question for a prediction from Greg. How soon would you expect it to be possible? I mean, we're just now seeing banking. Nation state banking, reserves that's starting to come into the crypto world, right? How soon before law will hit upon what is possible with smart contracts? That if you didn't have, if you had literally the transparency and the determinism of a smart contract for your law, you wouldn't have to worry about who the hell was going to be, that there's a some justice that is favorable to pedos that's going to be on the court now, right?
Although that was actually that was those.
There used to be a much bigger
from somebody coming inside the legal system.
privacy.
That was actually a perfectly sound thing for a judge to be doing.
I remember growing up, one of the angriest my mother ever was is I was at the doctor and I was like 11, and I was like, hey, I don't want my mom in here. And I told her, I was like, Mom, I don't want you in here. She goes, well, tough, you don't tell the doctor. I'm going to tell it. I was like, no, you're going to be embarrassed, man. You're going to say stuff about my poop or whatever. No. It's like, why won't you let me be here by myself? And she was like, no, So when the doctor came in, I was like, hey, doctor, I really don't want my mom in here. And then he was like, you need to leave. And she was like, what? It's like, yeah. He's, old enough where, because of the HIPAA laws or whatever. I didn't know I was a kid, but he made my mother leave. And she's like, I can't do anything. Can't talk to him. And she goes, well, I was like, I can't talk to you about it. He asked you to leave. Yeah, I have to. So they forced her. She was I thought I was going to get killed.
Me, I would have taken up this like, well, okay, then he's paying for it. Just know that. And then I'll take off. You're paying for it. I'll be in the waiting room.
To your question, Joe.
But the thing was, and I think this is a really big deal because I think this is why we've lost so much privacy, is because they've been hey Lisa, they've been the argument's been changed to where it's not like what I just happened to me there. It was about privacy. It was about privacy for everyone, but what it would be morphed into is children's rights or parents overstepping their bounds, so that's how things have been changed in all areas of privacy.
Right.
Where
we invented this weird concept of positive rights, where
but there's the privacy
entitled
argument
to have somebody use force to do something,
because you can't be honest about privacy and argue against it. So you have to change up the argument in some way to be able to take away that right that we have to privacy.
Right. Well, it's intrinsically linked to free expression. Joe, though, your question, I think the biggest challenge, I wrote this article a while back, back in 2018, about smart contracts and how they're not really contracts at all. And if anybody's ever read Code V2 by Lawrence Lessig, that was the guy who was really good friends with Aaron Schwartz, but I found out he was also a really good reasoner about cyberspace law. And you can get this book free online. I will make sure that we get a link in the notes as well, so you guys can check it out. But he said this thing that made me think about smart contracts in a new way. To where are they really contracts at all, or are the choices we make about what code we put into place in virtual spaces, are those really regulators themselves? And I think that's true. I think that they're not contracts. They're decentralized regulators. And I think it'll be a while before we see regulatory processes be handed off to automation, but this automates the need to regulate, right? Like you're going to see a lot of professional state, like pro staters, like who have been working careers in governance as bureaucrats, resist this pretty heavily or try to frame it as something different because their jobs are at stake. You can pretty much do the job of the SEC passively with code if you think about it carefully, right? As far as making,
I think that's an absolute. I mean, the biggest problem, frankly, with bureaucrats and bureaucracies is that it's centralized power without transparency that is unilaterally and arbitrarily applied. You know, they can say, "Hey, I don't like the fact that guy has red hair, so I'm going to go after him." And it's like, oh, somebody else gets off. It's like, oh, we didn't have the time for it. Doesn't matter. Right. And I don't know. I would say there's still. It depends on now as deployed on Ethereum or other questionable. But if you have, in fact, my thought is that they are more granular contracts because it's a transactional level agreement that if I am cryptographically signing and potentially sending a medium of exchange to have this thing do something in interaction with you or with a system or network, it's a contract, but I'm cryptographically signing it once for this particular purpose, and which might have some time.
It might be retroactively deemable a contract, right? But to meet all of the elements of contract, when it
I don't know. I would
consider
it, because if you consider what German law versus common law
like
English, I think there are a lot of weird things in law anyway. Where I prefer logically, and I'm not an expert, but I prefer what would be the Germanic, whatever that style of law is. It makes far better sense to me for precedent and everything else than common law. Seems kind of everything that I know about is like, why is this that is crazy to me. But
I don't know why there isn't more digital law firms that have popped up over the past couple of years.
Because law firms are not allowed to do a lot of things because of the legal code of ethics. There are actually legitimate reasons that they justify in those rules, but it's mostly still competition control, right?
And I will tell you the biggest reason that most crypto law is in place is the quote unquote racket. There's a ton of money in crypto, so they push a ton of resources there to basically bleed as much out as they can through fear and anything. That's really what happens. And there's a huge interchange. You look at all the Ripple stuff and the back and forth between the law firms and the regulators themselves. It's all, and what was it called? What was the bit something law in New York, where the guy who wrote it then went over to become a consultant. So he purposely made it complex and horrific so that he could go consult.
That's the nature of regulation. And before we move on to the next question, I guess I would like to close with this one point. The blockchain can perfectly enforce rules. So if we want to knee-jerk to regulation, we should probably first stop and think, do we want this rule if it's perfectly enforced? Because that could be a hellscape of a nightmare. Like a lot of the rules we enforce are there to not be properly enforced, but claim we have a rule for, right? If we can live in a world where that's perfect, 100% enforcement, then we should put it into the rules for the future. But if we can't live with that, then we shouldn't.
There should be fewer rules, though.
So, but leaving that behind, we got a whole bunch of great questions. We should try to get through more of them. Earth Dragon, great name. Question. Speaking of privacy coins, I have noticed a trend when crypto gets hit pretty hard and is dropping. The only tokens that seem to do wellish during these times in comparison to the rest are privacy coins like Monero. The more violent the dip, the more I've tracked this to be true. Is there any reason why they retain more value or even slightly go up during most market dumps? That's a great question.
I think because most times that there's a dip is usually because of FUD or some type of
China banned crypto.
That covers so much. I mean, regulation, lies, China's doing this, governments are going to do this, uncertainty in the world, all those which we cling to privacy, and a lot of it is because certain assets are moved because of that FUD into privacy coins because people are uncertain about what's going to happen to the coin that they're in, be it Bitcoin or whatever. So they'll move it into a privacy coin, which is weird to think about. Privacy coins then become more of the gold and silver of the industry. Then
you can't go directly from privacy coins into cash, gold, or some physical commodity, can you? Right? Like you have to get it out through a centralized exchange, and you usually have to convert to some non-privacy coin to get it out, right? Like for the most part, unless you're a really good expert at this, like you can't just dump your privacy coins. And
you can buy gold and silver with privacy coins, which I think is a good way.
I mean, you can sell your privacy coins on an exchange.
You can, but you risk your privacy with every transaction that doesn't involve just privacy coins, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the people that buy them value that.
There's been a lot of
talk. They don't sell.
I got a couple of theories on the why privacy coins are sometimes doing better than others. I don't know if any of them are right, but one thing I thought was interesting is with what I've been kind of sort of experimenting with mining Monero, is I've been getting into these profit switching algorithms, which there's an airplane. Sorry about that. I've been getting into these profit switching algorithms that will switch to it always pays out in Monero, right? No matter what you're mining. And I think it's interesting that always gives a buying pressure for Monero. So if people are switching to other coins and mining them, but then Monero Ocean is turning it on the exchange, on the back end, and everybody gets paid out in XMR. Doesn't that mean that there are systems in place that are constantly buying XMR, where other coins don't have that built in? And then another thing I've been thinking about is there's been a lot of talk here in Miami and elsewhere and with Monero and stuff about fungibility and about businesses not wanting to be tied to prior transactions on a chain, because if somebody comes and buys a cup of coffee from you, but they are a gun runner or somebody who's really bad and illegal to do business with, do you have to, as a business, worry about that? With cash, you don't. But with something like Bitcoin, you kind of do at that point, right?
Well, so at least if we go one way, yeah.
Yeah, and so
I don't think so. I think that's the definition of fungibility,
Right, but
but saying it's Bitcoin is not as fungible as a privacy coin, because you can get a privacy coin and be confident that you're siloed away from the history of the the transactions in that chain of custody, that kind of thing. So you're not going to be caught up in some kind of web. If the government sends out a web saying anybody involved with these transactions or these people within 7 degrees of whatever is going to be caught up in our little surveillance
colored coin stuff.
Yeah. And
and with companies like Chainalysis out there who are making their money screwing up the whole point of crypto.
Something Greg was saying earlier about the difference between privacy and secrecy. Monero's got view keys built in, so it's not like a business can't comply with regulation and or audit keys, I guess, view keys, audit keys. So you can still comply and let the tax man audit your business records to make sure that you're in compliance. It's just a matter of keeping your business away from shit you might be scared of, whether it's justified or not. There's a lot of confusion and fear about being associated with something that's scary in crypto. So maybe that's another reason that.
Well, it's the other piece of it too, though, is the whole ESG movement, and this is something a lot of people don't know about, but people have suppliers for their businesses, right? They have little pieces they depend on from bigger players that distribute things and smaller players that they distribute to and whatever, right? You can't build a car if you don't have car parts. And so you buy from a car parts manufacturer. And if you want tires, you got to go to one of the 2 or 3 companies that exist. And if the only way they'll do business with you is if you have a rule on file that says we won't take money from these kinds of people, then all of a sudden you're beholden by contract to enforce FinCEN, in the things that you buy. And that's the whole point of ESG. The tyranny of the nudge is what we get when we get that. And it happens behind the scenes away from the product. That's why anytime you hear stakeholder capitalism, you should run like hell. because what that means is the consumer is not sovereign. We have people that we owe duties to that are not you buying the product, and we will, when compelled, elevate their concerns over yours. We'll either not provide you with the product that you want, or we'll compromise the product in some way that behooves somebody who doesn't want you to have that.
Shower heads, laundry equipment, all that type of crap. Is
right. Oh yeah.
Toilets. It's crazy.
Yeah, I found out. Yeah. Oh, here's a good one I found out. Do you know that laundry detergent has been screwed up since 1990? And you can actually buy something simple at a hardware store to fix it.
Really?
Because the chemical they took out is still available for purchase.
I didn't know that.
It's like it's a nitrate that you can get. And I actually tested this theory because I read it online. I was like, is this true? I've never had cleaner clothes since I added this back.
Really?
They also just recently took it out of dish soap. So if you want to get your dishes to actually take all the food chunks off again, it's basically like a surfactant that they took out. A surfactant is a thing that binds to the soap residue or the detergent residue and all the chunks of things it's washing off and make sure it actually washes off. If you add that back in, you get better stuff. That went away by regulation and is enforced by nudge in a lot of places.
Wow.
Dave,
like we should start collecting money for Grant's medical bills. What's that?
You working with the farmers markets and other businesses that I know you've talked about. You can be a business and accept stable or privacy coins because you can accept that, and then there can be an instant settlement in USD or in something else, to where you basically only have the stable coins for a few seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the tax man goes, everything is recorded, so it doesn't matter that you got $20 in stable coins or in privacy coins or in whatever. It just matters that you got $20 and you're going to pay taxes on getting the $20.
Yeah, it depends on which lawyer you ask too, because this is last year at Miami Bitcoin, but I talked to a tax lawyer that was saying that the way that it's written, like if you really wanted to drill down into the letter of the tax law, is that even fluctuations in price while that transaction is in transit from the time when you're getting paid, like if the price is the volatility is such that the price goes up in transit, then you're still you're paying taxes on that. So
that's why you can cash out your loan, and if something major happens, they can unlock the price and still charge you a little residue.
I've never paid for anything in cryptocurrency that was the exact number that it cost. Like when I bought my Monero ticket, it was like $99, but then when I paid with XMR on their website, it was like some change difference, because that in transit fluctuation is always different. So it's just not something I think that's accounted for. You have to do a best effort. That's all I can do is do my taxes the best way I know how. And I'm not trying to cheat, but it just feels like I would rather fuck it up than be accused of evading taxes. But that's not what I'm trying to do at all. Forgot why I started talking about that, but yeah.
You wanted to expose our unseen jail cells that we all live in. So
right. Wait. Was that a reference to Discordianism? Did you just mention the Black Iron Prison?
They're
coming for you, man. Yeah, and by the way, we will link the stuff about the laundry detergent in the show notes if anybody wants to add it back. If one were to do that, one would not necessarily be violating the law by any stretch of the imagination, because manufacturers are the ones beholden to do this, not people.
I'm reminded of that.
And the chemical itself is actually pretty safe. The concern was over algae blooms, potentially crowding out fish's ability to access oxygen in Lake Michigan. But in all likelihood, it was probably some kind of cronyism.
Yes, trust the science.
So don't feel too terrible putting this stuff back in, because it really does actually make a big difference.
So you're not allowed to cause algae blooms unless you are the sugar industry.
Yep, exactly. It's okay when they do it.
It's all broken, guys. This is what DAOs are needed for.
Yep. So, and privacy protects this, right? Privacy protects this. So onward and upward, we got another question here from Bit by the Coin, our favorite. I saw that Dragonchain posed this question and thought it would be great for the show. Question: is it possible to create a digital currency that simultaneously appeases both the central authorities and advocates for decentralization? I would say yes, but, and I'm preface this. My answer is yes, but, and let's come back to me. Go. Everybody else answer first. I want a shot at this one. Go ahead.
I had this idea of using like a dual system of privacy coin and not privacy coin, to where the like if you take Monero and Bitcoin, for example, where you could pay taxes in Bitcoin so that you can trace where it goes through the system or what you're paying for, or something like that. But then like the money that the people use is a privacy coin where you don't have to disclose. Like you don't want the government saying, you know, oh, we don't like this person because he buys too much I don't know, laundry detergent that has the wrong chemical in it, you know, that kind of thing. So the people do need some kind of privacy coin. But I think that the central authorities could use a transparency coin, you know, the opposite of that. So where you have a decentralization and privacy for the people, and centralization and transparency for the entities that oversee.
That's a good model.
I don't think that that's possible right now, because go back to the question real quick so I can read what he said. Oh, centralized authority. Because there is no clearly defined authority or clearly defined framework yet. So we don't know how to appease them, because we don't know what they want or what it has.
Ain't that the damn truth?
Wow. I will say that, I mean, the authority is obviously there. We don't necessarily know who or what it is. And the definition, I guarantee, is there, but it's also probably very dynamic as whatever they want. Just why it's not transparent to us, why it's not constitutional, right? My answer would be it's definitely possible. It's definitely possible now, but it would require more honor than is currently available anywhere in at least our government. But by the way, 2 points on this. Ned Stark, everything before the word "but" is bullshit, and we know what happened to Ned Stark. But anyway, that one way or another, I think it should be used. And here's the opportunity. And you know, I don't think that any large Western nation state will do this. I don't have a lot of hope for it, but who knows? It's possible. You know, a lot of things are possible that we historically you wouldn't expect to happen as fast as they can. You know, you could have crazy stuff happen and we could be in a golden age next year. Who knows? But the capability of the technology would allow an honorable implementation in such a way that more wealth is brought to the citizenry. That is, because you think about it, Bitcoin itself, the clearest example of a controlled, and it's so funny. People will talk on it on Twitter. It's like, oh, Bitcoin is not inflationary. And I'm like, literally, it is. It is inflationary. That's not the point. The point is, and I actually prefer potentially, deflationary or at least constant supplies. But the fact that it is inflationary, but is at a known, transparent, math-controlled curve that everybody knows how many each block will produce, and you can predict within reason the amount of Bitcoin that would be produced in a given year compared to gold or silver or any other commodity that we might have in which to base fiat currency. So in my opinion, they should be not using Bitcoin the way that some countries have done. I do think they should be creating their own coin, but literally backing it with Bitcoin with proper governance. And, so they could still do things flexibly, but it's all transparent. And it wouldn't be some guy from the Fed sitting in front of a bunch of old gray-haired guys parsing words, right? To decide, oh, wait, does that mean there's going to be inflation? Wait a minute. What's that mean for me? It's all BS. It should literally be, look, in 90 days, we're going to have to print more tokens because of whatever reason. and the governance would be there, and people could say, I don't want that, I'm going to vote against that, right? Or whatever. But there are plenty of honorable ways to do it, which would be remarkably valuable. I think third world countries will become wealthy if they do this. But is it going to happen? I don't know. Like I said, I don't think there's enough honor in the world to do what's actually necessary at that level, unless the citizenry decide to get more violent. And, with food riots coming, that might be. So anyway,
I think here's the risk, right? I think that they're going to pay lip service to privacy, as they always do, right? Privacy interests can be protected, and you can do it with a privacy coin, so long as your self-sovereign identity system requires a trusted setup in the presence of authorities who verify your identity through documents, and that you can't get those freely. I think the question here is going to come down to self-sovereign identity, right? Because like Zcash, for example, the reason that initially people were skeptical of its privacy capacity was because the validators had to have a trusted setup. And when they launch Halo, that goes away, right? And all of a sudden Zcash is looking pretty shiny. And there are probably other reasons why you can poke holes in it, but that was like the big obvious one that you could make a case for. So
is there a relatively short way that you could explain what Halo's doing? Because I actually haven't done my due diligence on that. I've read about that solving the trusted setup issue, but I don't know exactly how. Is that too complex to talk about right now?
Fancy cryptographic karate gimmicks? Yeah, I would say I have no idea how it actually works, but based on my experience with that team, especially their leadership, like those guys are not the sort to say they can do something if they can't. Like the fact that they even admitted to the trusted setup as a thing that they put on the bold print of the front page was a disclosure. Like it's been that way since the beginning. Those guys have been honest about what they can't do.
They weren't trying to hide the fact that it's set up
right.
that way. Yeah.
Right, and that's why I like them, because mostly that's why they've been honest about what's not possible, and also been vocal about how you protect your privacy while interacting with it, which is not the same thing as protecting your privacy while holding it. The thing for me is like if we have cryptocurrency become a thing that the government is okay with, which it really has no choice about, and they're starting to see that, then the self-sovereign identity system has to be implemented for them to be okay with, from a tax standpoint, regardless of the fact that AML, KYC, anti-terror tracking of finances is not the only way one could police, nor is it the least invasive means. And I think that it should probably be abandoned instead of canonized. But if you think that that's okay and you want to do that stuff, then you need self-sovereign identity. Now, the question is, when should somebody be able to go get a new one? And should they be able to break the relationship between themselves and their old identity? Can they have multiples? The government is going to say no, and they're going to want you to have to go in and set up your new self-sovereign identity with somebody watching so that they can make a record in one of their databases that link your accounts. So you will not be able to escape your one identity once you have it. And that will be how they invade your privacy in a way that is sufficient to make them okay with a privacy coin, right? As long as they can see who you are at the DMV, and invade that whenever they want. They don't care if you keep secrets from the rest of the world. It's going to be like, yeah, we want privacy protected, but that's not the topic of self-sovereign identity.
Yep.
Nor is it the topic of multiple identities. They'll paint it as, of course we have to have one identity that you check with the government. Duh, only criminals would want something else, they would say.
Yeah, and that is why building and adoption are so important, because frankly, we have a window of time here where these capabilities can be built before the regulators figure it out, and not to beat them to the punch or to do anything else, but to be able to build it in a marketplace where it can be decided what works best, and to have multiple options, and that's the best possible way to do things. Not to wait because we need you guys to, because they're not going to. We need you guys to lay out an exact pattern for us of what we need to do to, fit this in, into the peg, the hole. Anyway.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Remember, everybody should remember that when it comes to tax on things that people care about and should care about, like privacy, the government is a lot like the operatives from Firefly, right? They come at you sideways and hit you where you're weak. They will bring a case where somebody murdered 15 children gruesomely as a justification for creating a rule that makes it so they can invade everybody's privacy forever and always. Amen. Right? And they will harp on that. And if anybody tries to argue the principle, they will say, you must be pro-murdering children. Yeah. That is how this will come.
We were watching South Park yesterday, and it was integrity, and people in Colorado were growing their own weed. And he's like, whoa, no. And then he went before, the city council, and he was like, people do that. They could do this and that. And they irrigate irresponsibly, could make floods and kill babies in the floods, and they're killing babies. And that was the whole thing that these big marijuana companies were came down and giving them money. Hey, we're against killing babies irrigation thing. Yeah, we're totally against killing babies. Here's $1 billion.
Think of the children, Sean. Yeah, and we did get a Firefly reference in, so I think that might be every show. Anyway.
Okay. All right.
Shout out to
how are we doing on
Curious.
time, guys? We've got another 10 minutes or so. Let's see if we can get through a few more questions, maybe. Or
I might actually have to bow out because my device is dying out. So I was going to say, I want to go ahead and say thanks, everyone. I'm going to be back. I'm going to go charge up and be back for the DAO meeting today. I apparently didn't plan well enough with my battery capacity.
Run it like Kramer. See how long you can get this to go. We'll stay on. We'll just keep going until your phone dies.
Right. I had a friend in high school who thought she had a magic car on multiple occasions until it ran out of gas. It had a big reserve, but the car does shut off. Anyway,
fumes, man. Just keep it tight.
Next question. And we've got Jacob Wayne asking, what is your favorite privacy coin and how would you elevator pitch it to someone? Okay. Who wants to go first? Joe?
Probably Monero. I'm not an expert on many of these. I've held a few of them, but I don't think I hold any right now, which is unfortunate. But I haven't had time to really get back in. And I maybe the elevator pitch would be Fluffy Pony, right? I don't know, but generally, I guess the best would be as a protection. You think about it right now in time, probably the point that would hit home to the most people about privacy coins, to the ones that might care at all, would be a protection against tyranny. The tyranny that you might expect coming or might not. That would be the level of whether you should be would care about privacy coins.
I think they're very important. It's a tough question because I guess I would say Monero, but when you look at Litecoin, they're developing, bringing Nimblewimble on, so they're going to have a privacy aspects of their
Litecoin's bringing in Nimblewimble?
Yeah.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they're going to just specifically for privacy to and you'll have the option to use that to make your transactions untraceable.
I think that's going to be weird to people because you got to keep your Nimblewimble wallet hot to receive, don't you?
Which will be, and it's also going to be a little bit more expensive on the gas fees, but you'll have the option. So I think we all know it's coming to that. I think when you look at what happened in Canada over the past few months, everyone knows that it's coming to that because of, like Joe said. I mean, you said food riots, and it's only half a joke.
It's not a joke. I think they're coming. I don't know if they'll be here in the U.S., but I think on the coasts, I would not doubt it.
I mean, they've regulated people against gardening. They've regulated people against rainwater. They've done all of these things over the past few decades to where people being self-sufficient, it's not even in the lexicon of people's thoughts.
Yeah.
People don't do it. Nobody has a freedom garden. It's not like that anymore. And that without that, you're completely dependent. So it's not that far fetched to think that that's not coming.
Yep.
And with control, that's where tyranny is going to thrive. And when it basically comes down to, like I said, money is one of the biggest pillars of tyranny and of anytime. Like I said, we went through history. When it comes to what's coming next, one of the biggest foundations is money. And if we can have privacy and have sovereign money, it completely changes the game. Yeah. It really, really does.
Yeah. For me, I'm a big believer in the Hayek principle that good, sound money is money that has competitors.
Yes.
So I may or may not hold any and or some and or all of the privacy coins. I'm engaging in a practice that everybody who picks them up right now should adopt. Anybody asks you what your favorite one is, be sure to obfuscate it a bit. You don't want anybody to know which one you use until you have to use it, and only then do you want to expose it to people who need to know in order for you to use it, right? So that being said, since I'm more trying to teach than I'm trying to hide, I will dox myself as having an affinity for Zcash, and that really comes from my admiration for the team behind it. Austin, when he first went to, and Austin's, for people who maybe knew the audience, the co-founder of Rivet, one of my co-founders. He's our technical mind, and he worked on this project that I mentioned earlier called Key Split, which I'll put a link to the blog post he wrote about it in the show notes too. But one of the judges was Zuko, the guy behind Zcash, and really sharp guy, person who has his beliefs about him, and all of the people who create privacy coins are believers. But but the way that they've gone about creating it, where similar to the way that ETH was done with slow rollouts of improvements, they have constantly worked on a roadmap, just doggedly pursuing a roadmap that gets them to where they said the original vision can be, and they're close to achieving one of the most important milestones, which is the Halo trustless setup. So what that means is, for Zcash to work right now, you have to have somebody who become a validator, and they have to go through a trustless or a setup ceremony. And that is the only way you can do this currently. That ends with the Halo update. And all of a sudden, anybody can become a validator. They don't have to know who they are. That is the only weak link outside of some very, very clever types of hypothetical arguments about cryptographic attacks and quantum computing and all that kind of fun stuff.
Torborn Jensen,
the major hole left in Zcash.
A question. He said, "What about Dash? You can send cheap, fast, safe, choose privacy we wanted. Is it just as good?" No, I've heard bad things about Dash recently. What do you guys know about it?
I know that it's regulated pretty heavily by exchanges. Like their compliance groups are really tough on it. Like I picked up a little bit of Dash recently, and didn't realize that when I was buying it, that I was setting myself up for a transfer limit restriction on the amount that I had to have that was much higher than the buy-in transfer amount. You buy Dash, and getting out of Dash is more expensive. I know that. That would be the just a pragmatic downside to it. I haven't looked into the technicals of it. Generally, when I see somebody making a claim that it's private and that it still exists, that's a pretty good market indicator that that it does what it says it does. I also don't know how many people who have been invaded or had their privacy invaded because they either used it improperly or because there's a hole in it. But I do know that the Dash is a respectable one. I know that exchanges don't treat it very respectfully. So I would caution that. That's probably true of all of them to some extent, but that's one that takes a lot of heat.
Well, essentially, the more choices we have, and
Yeah.
928, the more choices we have, the better off we all are. For choice and in case there are mistakes or unforeseen things that a certain algorithm causes, that's why you need more than one choice.
Mhm.
So it improves all of our liberty if we do, and that even goes for the non-privacy coins. I mean, I remember early days Bitcoin, it was considered a privacy coin, even though the way that they didn't even have the hierarchical deterministic keys yet, and a whole bunch of really interesting things.
Yep.
They did.
Okay, I think we have time for this last one because it's a really great question. You guys down? Let's do it.
Sure.
Topic: as long as you use blockchain technology and a non-trusting privacy coin as a tool, you cannot expect to retain your privacy. Change my mind. Spoiler, I guess that's actually what Ripple said during their hearing. Okay, first off, it's got to say this. I heard some credible rumors, and I'm sure you all may have too, that the Ripple guys have funded campaigns against crypto to gin up FUD and Discord and dislike for their competing coins. And a lot of those resources have gone into especially the environmental attacks against proof of work algorithms, which is fucking disgusting if it's true. And if that's the case, then fuck fidget spinner coin to the ends of the earth. I hope it dies. But if that's not true, then still it's a weird logo. They should probably consider changing it. That said, yes, you can, because we control our governments, right? They don't own us. If we want to expect privacy in a thing, then all we have to do is find the public will to insist upon our expectation being met. It's not an unreasonable thing.
It's
that our things in our phones should be treated as privately as they actually are. It's not we're oversharing; it's they're over invading.
Yeah,
and that's
I think the question is that the fact that it's on chain means that you could assemble a history no matter what. If let's say that, and I don't know enough of the details on the attack vectors, but let's say even something as strong as Monero, that if and I don't know some of this, right? But that it's on chain. Theoretically, they could get into my machine and pull out info. I mean, if they had my keys, then it's no longer private. If they obtained the keys, right? So a lot of it is, I guess, operational security questions. If you don't know what you're doing, then you can expect to screw up at some point. And you look at Silk Road, and
well, it's also
mistakes,
it's
right?
gross that our police have a standard of what they can do that is equivalent to the world's creepiest motherfucking stalker. Like the fact that the argument is because a member of the general public can do it also without being arrested for breaking the law or being sued for trespass. And that's the edge of the limit of what any police officer can do to you. Like that's insane.
And if you were to step back,
a standard we want.
If you were to let's say appear in this world with full understanding of how things work here, and from somewhere else, it would be a little more apparent how backwards it is, because literally the people that have the power in our governments are actually surveilling us when it is we who should be surveilling them. We should know, where
people have lost that mindset.
We should know
basic,
who are you
basic
meeting with?
mindset has been.
Why can't we see where our tax money is actually being spent?
Exactly.
Right. I mean, literally, we should know every single lunch meeting, every single private meeting, and they should be recorded, in fact, with an elected representative who is being paid by the populace to be doing their job.
But it's gotten to the point where if you even ask that, you're looked at like a psycho.
Well, fun fact too, your tax money, by the way, is mostly being spent making the minimum payment on the country's credit card.
Yeah. Well, it's all broken. The whole thing's broken. So this technology is probably the only hope for the world, because other technology is too powerful. And this is kind of, this is, in my opinion, the organic, natural evolution of technology to, decentralize that power. So
Yep, absolutely. I hope that, that changing your mind on this is a matter of what's moral and right, what's ethical, right? This isn't a thing where you can say we can have this or we can't, and that's how it is, right? Like, it's more about, are we willing to fight for the principle behind it, so that our systems remain, integral to us in a way that has integrity as well. We don't want to just say, well, everybody has to use this, and that Supreme Court precedent from the 70s says third party doctrine means you have no reasonable expectation of privacy in anything you share with a third party, and because automated routers are occasionally maintained by somebody, that's a third party, and therefore all the information you share with the internet is no reasonable expectation of privacy. The argument sounds really great in a brief for somebody trying to send someone to jail for something they probably shouldn't have known in the first place. You shouldn't be able to get into that stuff. That stuff used to be locked in boxes before we invented the internet. We should go by what people feel is right, not what people feel falls into a Kafka trap. Fuck that shit. This is a principled matter. You can change your mind by deciding to stand up for it. So I hope that's what you do. If not, I'm going to try to do it.
Spirit anyway. We bring to the table, and as a new subscriber, we'll say welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, and I say that with all the love in my heart, man. You got to stand up and fight for it if you want it, if you care about it. If not, that's cool too, because we're free to do what we want. But I'm not gonna stand by.
All right.
Freedom. All right, I think we're to the end of time. Do you guys have any outro comments to make? Joe, do you want to talk about what's up?
Sure. Doing a lot of stuff at Dragonchain. We don't have any announcements upcoming in the next few weeks that I at least am remembering right now. There'll probably be some articles and stuff coming out, but the Den side, I'll take Den side too. We do have at least a couple of DAOs that are rolling in. One of them has already announced, Sticky DAO, that should be, if I understand correctly, will be going live on April 15. And super exciting because they're tying in all of the Web3 DAO vision with behavioral mechanics and making it simple so that it's a very easy thing to do, and that they'll be able to draw a lot of engagement because it doesn't cost anything to vote, right? Bunch of cool stuff like that. It'll be real fun. And I don't know, as always, just we will keep building until we can build no more. So that's it.
Hell yeah. How about you, Sean?
Not a lot going on now. Kind of a chill time. No Crypto Rewind next week. Probably try to get some interviews in over the next week or two. Just because I don't really have much going on. Might speak today at a Shitcoin virtually in the what's it called, Alt Space or whatever on Steam.
Cool.
That metaverse is pretty cool. I don't know if y'all have ever been there. It's kind of neat. I don't know. That's about it.
Cool. Awesome. For us, okay, so Rivet is about done with our Cardinal rollout. We're going to start working on other chains. We've got Polygon. We are looking into Kronos now. We've got some really cool stuff coming down the pike with Rivet. So, as always, if you see an idea that's not out there, if you're looking for something, you can't find it, build it for the love of God before somebody else does. And then, last but not least, I would say, this is our chance to build a thing that we actually want. Like, pull that, dust off that optimism that you had back before all of this bullshit, because it's going to be us that decide the future. This is one of those pivotal moments. Yes. So go out and be a part of it, and make sure that you contribute your best vision of the future to it. And if we do that, I think everything's going to come out like it always has for human beings. Pretty damn amazing. So
ain't no force in the verse could stop us.
And so hit the like button, hit the retweet button, at me on Twitter and ask questions. Like, I don't give a shit. I'll answer, or I'll try to. It might just be with a GIF, but share this around, because that will reward you and reward us and reward this channel by enriching the content here, by bringing more people to it. So that's what we got today. Signing off.
Thanks, everybody.
The first tap of a conductor's wand. The first rivet in a mile-high tower. The master link at the genesis of the never-ending chain. The moment a single empty canvas meets a singular master stroke. There is no one thing. Because now, there are many. Because soon, there will be more. Because one is ever the beginning. Like the first link in an infinite chain, or the first rivet in the tallest skyscraper. The master stroke is found in the masterpiece. What will you begin?